And a good Monday afternoon to you. This is Cards Hub 365, powered by Gray Bar here on Sports Hub STL, presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Joe Roderick, Mike Claiborne with you here a few hours before the Cardinals and Braves start a 3-game series. Claims it was a rough Sunday. It was a rough past 4 days in Queens for the Mets. First time being swept in New York, 4-game series since 1986.
Well, that was a good Mets team, too. They won the whole thing. But just looking back over the weekend, this is part of the season. I know there was some discussion about, this is when you have youth and this is when things kind of come up short. I think the one thing you have to continue to look at is the effort. They're going to make mistakes. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And you're a little short in some areas, but it was not a good weekend. And I don't care how close the games were. A walk-off might as well be 20-0. I mean, at that point, you want to stay in the games. You had chances. You just couldn't get that run across the plate when you needed, and you couldn't get an out when you needed.
The runners in scoring position, 5 for 25, I think it was in the series. The clutch hitting just wasn't there, but in a bigger kind of scope of things, it's the power hitting, the slugging that just hasn't been there at all since that first week of the season. Cardinals, I believe, 28th in baseball right now in home runs since that first week, where they did tee off against the Twins and the Angels here at home. And as soon as they went on the road since then, the home runs and the power has just been kind of non-existent, which also coincides with Ivan Herrera not being in the lineup since then too.
Yeah, I think that's a good point you make. He's been kind of like the catalyst, and a guy that you really miss is certainly in the batter's box. And the unfortunate thing, nobody's been able to pick up that slack. I mean, Brendan Donovan got red hot for a minute, but you don't expect him to be that way the whole season. You're getting some small contributions from JC. Jordan Walker had a hit in the series, but you do need a little bit more thump. And so I ask you, like I would ask anyone, 2 weeks ago, we thought the hitting coach was a savior of the organization. And he still might be, but this tells you how this season works when it comes to making adjustments. And Joe, we're 3 weeks into the season. We haven't played 30 games yet. But here's what's going on. Teams are starting to formulate books on people and what they're doing, what they can't do. And hitters need to start making adjustments as well. And that it's an on and off. It happens every day in the game. And if you're not making adjustments and knowing what you can and can't do against certain pitching, you're going to have this problem.
Yeah, and that's going to lead to a important discussion tomorrow. And I know it's already taken place. It's probably been taking place all weekend. When you look at the offense and you look at the spark that's needed, Mason Wynn is getting ready to come back. He's getting ready to get off the IL and be activated on Tuesday. Had a really good day yesterday in Memphis, 2 home runs in a rehab assignment. Claibs, Thomas Sajaci's hitting right now. Thomas Sajaci is for Pop. I guess you're getting off the bench. Quite a few doubles already on the year. Got bumped up to number 2 in the lineup yesterday to kind of help that top half of the Cardinal lineup. He can't be going anywhere. He's not the one that's going to be getting sent down when Mason Wynn is activated tomorrow. So in your mind right now, who are the viable options that the Cardinals have to send down to Memphis?
Well, somebody might come up with a tweak. Let's take that into the account. Somebody might tweak something.
Anybody that needs a tweak.
Yeah. You see the challenge is your bench is kind of lopsided. You have some interesting players there. I mean, think about this. Where was Pozo at last year? Where was Luke and Baker at last year? And both had credible spring trainings. But now we have a new game. The teams are coming after guys a little bit more as far as pitching is concerned. And Baker hasn't hit with the power you would hope. That doesn't mean he can't, but we just know he hasn't. So that's a concern. We don't know how far off Herrera is. I know he's scheduled to take on some baseball related activities here fairly soon. So you would think he's at least another 2 weeks away. So you just have to go with the guy who's swinging the bat well. I used to always say, you hit, you play. And so JC is hitting. Whoever is not hitting, when you look at people on your bench, they probably have to make an adjustment there. You might have to look at what you want to do with your pitching staff, because your pitching staff, if you can fight through Thursday or Wednesday, you get a day off, but then you go on another long stretch of games. So you really have to be careful in keeping your bullpen fresh and making sure your starters continue to stretch out. This whole 5-inning thing, we've talked about it before. You can't live on 5-inning pitching. You can't. It burns up a bullpen. It doesn't give, it tells me that your pitcher is getting a lot of 3-2 counts and getting a lot of pitches fall off. You can't have it. I'm sorry. If you want to be better, you have to have people who can go beyond 5 innings or more than 2 lanes. Because it doesn't win out over the course of time. So a lot of options I think they have to look at right now.
And that's when you look at yesterday's lineup. Thomas Saggese moved to number 2 up there. I was a little surprised to see him bumped up to that. I know they needed that there in the 2 spot, but last year it seemed like it took a really long time for Ali to be comfortable enough with Mason Wynn to move him up from the bottom of the lineup all the way to the top. We've seen Victor Scott only getting moved up to the top of the lineup this year when Lars Nootbaar has the day off, regardless of how well he hit at the beginning of the year and in spring training. So for Saggese, another guy who's right there, a young guy who is in his rookie season and still getting, his first 2 at-bats, to get moved up there. What does that tell you about the way Ali's kind of thinking about the lineup right now and kind of looking at a guy like a Saggese?
Well, it says a couple of things. One, I don't know if it's a fair comparison to compare Saggese to Scott and Wynn because of the speed factor. You're looking for a guy who can handle a bat in the 2 spot. If you get a runner on base in front of him, he can go the other way with pitches. He doesn't have to look for power. I think that's really one of the key elements on why you move him into that position, in hopes of being able to move a runner along and get the number 3 guy in a position to have a big inning. And that's why you probably leave Scott and or Wynn at bottom, go to top, to make sure that a guy like Saggese would have a crack at it, considering the other right-handed bats really haven't been as effective as you need them to be in that position.
Yeah, the Cardinals will go back at it today, still looking for a lineup out of today's game. And we do have one. As I hit refresh, the lineup Claibs has popped up for today. And all this Thomas Saggese talk, and he's not in the lineup for the Cardinals tonight. 6:15 game in Atlanta. Lars Nootbaar will lead off and play left. Wilson Contreras at first. Brendan Donovan at short. Nolan Arenado at third. Alec Burleson DHs. Jordan Walker in right. Nolan Gorman at second. Pedro Pages behind the plate. And Victor Scott is in center field today for the Cardinals. There is your lineup. We will get to more lineup talk, but first I do want to tell you a little bit about Pick 6, DraftKings Pick 6. It's real simple. You select 2 or more players and choose if they will have more or less of a stat. Claims it's available in most states, including California, Texas, Georgia, Missouri. I will say this. You go there now and look at somebody. There was a big historic event in the country or in the world that happened yesterday, Claibs. So it might be a good time to look at some of those numbers that Nick Castellanos could have
420 day.
What's that?
420 day yesterday?
No. That's for Cody Bellinger. Cody Bellinger 420 day yesterday. Okay. Cody Bellinger homered right on cue for on yesterday because it was 420. I'm talking about, the Pope passed away last night. Might be a good time to look at those Nick Castellanos numbers for today and see what they're giving him as far as home runs go or total bases for Nick Castellanos. Just throwing that out there for him.
You just lost me. So if you lost me, you probably lost somebody else. So
I didn't lose anybody, Claibs. I didn't lose a lot of people. There are some that get what
I admit
I'm
I'm not the smartest guy in the room here. So
I'm just throwing it out there. Hey, cash in on your baseball knowledge. New players get $50 in Pick Six credits instantly on just a $5 entry. You download the DraftKings Pick Six app. Use code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers to play $5. Get $50 in Pick Six credits. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick Six from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick Six not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick Six credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at picksix.draftkings.com/promos.
So will you help me with this later?
I will help you with it. Yes, I will absolutely help you with this later.
So I can explain to somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll give you the whole list and everything of all of the major world moments that have occurred with Nick Castellanos homering later that night. You're not aware of all of this. You're not aware of
this. Hey, listen, I can't stay on top of everything. So enlighten me. So whenever Castellanos hits a home run,
no. Whenever something big happens in the world,
Castellanos hits a home run.
Castellanos will likely homer that night.
Huh.
Yes, he has a knack for timing, as you might remember from the 2020 season with Tom Brenneman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that when this whole thing started? When we started?
That is when all of this started. Yes, that is when all of this happened to kick off in the world of Nick Castellanos. Okay. This is Cards Hub 365, powered by Gray Bar. Also, all content brought to you by DraftKings. The crown is yours. That lineup out there for tonight, as we mentioned before we took that break: Nootbaar, Contreras, Donovan, Arenado, Burleson, Walker, Gorman, Pages, and Scott. That is your lineup for tonight, as I believe Stephen Carey will be joining us here in a matter of seconds. And speaking of broadcasters, I saw a nice article in Awful Announcing today about Stephen's dad, Chip Carey.
What do you do now?
You got to go awfulannouncing.com. Very, very nice article written about Chip Carey and the.
I thought he did something.
Oh no. I mean, he did. But as you know, my dad has the mind of a 15-year-old, and he has.
I've been exposed to that. Yeah,
you have been, and let's say he has a fixation with a certain number.
Oh yes, I did hear about this.
He has to get it into each and every broadcast.
Yeah.
Now, somebody made a compilation of that. It did come up at the Easter dinner with my grandparents. That was
you didn't have to explain it to him, did you?
Oh, I didn't. No, which I think might even be a little bit more scarring for me, is that I didn't have to explain it to them. But the reality of it is that my dad has the mind of a 15-year-old, and I mean, look, statistically, he's not saying anything wrong. So there's a little wink, nudge moment there, but just be on the lookout for a certain number. You know, between 1 and 100. Maybe between 50 and 100 tonight on the broadcast.
Maybe between 58 and 70. You know, I mean, just random numbers is what I'm
really. Yeah.
And Stephen, I don't know how much of you caught. I was trying to explain the importance of possibly looking at a big night tonight from Nick Castellanos to Claibs, and I don't know if he's all that familiar with that. Not. He was asking for a little more of an explanation on that as well.
I know Nick Castellanos is a good major league player, but he's not high enough on my chain to try and track his success rate, especially if he's not in the Cardinal uniform.
Right.
I'm just trying to get him out.
Yeah. How do you put this with him? The big conversation on social media about Nick Castellanos in particular is that whenever there seems to be a tragic event, he's had really big offensive moments. So people line up, whatever happens, they've lined up all of the days that Castellanos has hit a home run, and a weirdly disproportionate amount of days there have been some type of negative event going on around the world. So that's why so many people are betting on him, because clearly Pope Francis.
Wait, the market's down 1,000 points again, or is I guess something bigger than that, huh?
Yeah, the Pope Francis passed away.
Okay, all right, that's big news.
Really, really big news.
So we spent the first, really, I mean, 15 minutes of the show today, Claibs and Stefan, talking about the factor, the impact that Thomas Saggesi's offense has had on with the Cardinals, or I shouldn't say the impact it's had, just what he has added to the offense that has been lacking the past 2 weeks now. And we get the lineup that pops out. No Thomas Saggesi in the lineup tonight, a day off, I would imagine, for him. But
he's faced a right-hander though too. I mean, let's take that into account. I mean,
and Nolan Gorman, you still need to give him his at bat. You need to give him those chances while he's here with the Cardinals. And Claibs, it's been a struggle over the weekend for Nolan Gorman, looking a little lost at the plate at times in New York.
I would agree with you. It just looks like he's regressed a little bit. I don't know whether that's the fact he's not playing every day, or is he trying to adjust to maybe some things he worked on in the offseason, and he's trying to get back to that. Guys fall out of habit real quick these days. I noticed, like, even in Jordan Walker's case, you look at his stances, maybe a little too open, where he's starting to chase that slider and chase that pitch away a little bit more, where he's feeling for it instead of trying to put real wood on it. So guys have kind of fallen back into some interesting, if not bad, habits. And so the question is, and I'll roll this out to both you guys, who is Nolan Gorman, or do we need more time?
Well, I think for me, you look at what the Cardinals said they wanted to do. They want to give runway to their young players. And with that injury for Gorman, you have to figure that out. And I think that because you're seeing success from Saggesi, because you're seeing success from other guys in the lineup that can play that second base, third base position, the runway is going to be a little bit shorter than they probably had anticipated going into this season. If Thomas Saggesi can be a serviceable second baseman, why not? Brendan Donovan is more than serviceable over there, both offensively and defensively. But what Gorman brings to the table that those guys, not to suggest that Thomas doesn't have the power, he has that slug. He has pop. And you're looking for Gorman to be a 30 home run player. Right now, I don't know if there's anybody on this team that's a 30 home run player outside of Ivan Herrera, and he's hurt. So I don't know what Nolan Gorman is. I trust that he'll figure it out. I trust that Brant Brown is working tirelessly with him. But if he gets to be back around that 40% of the time striking out type of player, it's difficult to justify him being the starting second baseman on the day-to-day when you have Saggesi there and other options at AAA.
Yeah, what you're trying to do, you're trying to give people runway, as you mentioned. You're also trying to win baseball games. And while this is an experiment you wish you could conduct in AAA, you can't, because you need to know if these guys can play or not. And every now and then you have to flip a coin on, is this a learning opportunity, or are we trying to win a ball game? And sometimes the two mesh. But there are other times where you just have to take one and just say, man, I hope they're going to be better the next time this situation is presented, because it normally does come back around at some point during the course of the season.
You look at what you expect out of Nolan Gorman, and we all want to see him make contact. Striking out 2-3 times a game is frustrating. It's extremely frustrating to watch when you're as a viewer, as a fan, as Claibs. When you're there calling the games, it's in certain times it has to be frustrating. And I think you look at him, and it's been a while since we've talked about these 3 outcome type of guys. But you look at, his numbers compared to like an Adam Dunn. And ideally, that's what I would love to see Nolan Gorman become. But it just doesn't. There's just something there that's maybe not, connecting for me. I mean, I'm looking at the numbers, Adam Dunn's career numbers compared to compared to what Gorman's done here, and they're not all that different. But it just seems like I don't remember Adam Dunn being as frustrating to watch at times as Gorman, and maybe that's just because I didn't see him every day.
You didn't see him enough.
Yeah.
But you know what? What's the strikeout percentage for him?
Strikeout percentage for Nolan Gorman is 33.9%.
Yeah, but what about Dunn?
For Dunn, it was only 28.6%.
See, there's a difference right there. Because Gorman is closer to what, 38% career?
Yeah, that's what they were talking about last year.
Yeah,
which
so
last year he was close to 38%.
Yeah,
this year surprisingly it's only 25%.
Well, I think that's a good sign, and I'm sure someone on the other side of that fence would say, "Give it time." It's still too many, no matter how you look at it, because you're not getting any productivity. You know, when you look at the amount of runs he's driven in, not many. He's only hit one home run. So if you're going to have a lower strikeout rate, that you got to put the ball in play. You need a fly ball. You need to make sure you're making contact. And that's the one thing, as you just touched on with Adam Dunn. Adam Dunn, on occasion, could move a runner along or get a fly ball. He wasn't the proverbial walking strikeout, but he was close in a lot of cases, but not the guy. You really had to respect him. Let's put it that way. He could hit the long ball. There was no question about that, but you still had to respect his bat and him being able to put the ball in play. And that's something Gorman isn't doing enough of.
Well, and I think it's easy to get frustrated at Gorman because some of the things carried over from last year, and he's come up in some big spots. But let's look at the numbers over this weekend. The Cardinals as a team went 22 for 129. That's a 171 offense against the Mets. So top to bottom, they're really struggling at the plate over the last 5 or 6 games. They went 5 for 25 with runners in scoring position, with 3 of those hits coming in game 2 where they were walked off. So I think we can look at Gorman and talk about Nolan Gorman as one of those players that we really have to have a magnifying glass on, because we know what he's capable of. But there are also other guys that I think have to be talked about as needing to perform a little bit more as well. It can't be individualized just to Gorman.
No, yeah, you can't own. Yeah, Gorman doesn't own this current hitting woe. That's a team effort. There's no doubt about that. There's some other guys who probably would like to have it at bat or 2 back. But, such is the case, you still have to find a way to get out of it. The Mets threw some decent pitching at the Cardinals. They look like Cy Young candidates the way they were able to get people out. But point being, the Cardinals went through a streak of facing some of the top pitchers in the National League or in baseball and had reasonable success. Now, most of that was at home with the exception of Paul Skeens. So we know it can be done. And the highs and lows of a season have certainly shown or reared its ugly head right now with regard to them not being able to make the contact they would like to. And Stephen, before you came on, Joe and I made the point with Joe, we haven't played 30 games yet. And you're seeing teams that are starting to adjust as far as how they pitch guys. They have a book on them now, this year's book, because you can only learn so much from spring training when everybody's throwing fastballs and you're working on this and working on that. But now we have a reasonable amount of early season at bats at hand. You kind of know what a guy can and can't do right now. Now, I say that all to say, now we're about to roll into some warmer weather. Atlanta is going to be 80 degrees over the next 3 days, and we should have decent weather in St. Louis. I'm wondering, for some hitters, is that going to be the starting point for them getting into a groove and maybe finding more consistent at bats, be it day to day, where they're in the lineup more than every other day?
Yeah, I imagine it will be. I think as the temperature rises, so do some spirits, right? You're in the heat, you're playing baseball. This is what you've been doing for the majority of your career. And let's not forget, the Braves have struggled a bit this year too.
Mm-hmm.
The Cardinals had success against them last year, went 4-2 in 2024 against Atlanta. The Braves are struggling offensively, .230 this season, a 4.24 ERA as a staff, which ironically the Cardinals are just 0.01 points ahead of them in Major League Baseball with a 4.23 ERA. So these two teams stack up very nicely against each other. But I think the Braves got the best case scenario, the Cardinals got the best case scenario against the Braves. You have Strider in his second start. You have Schwellenbach today, who has been great for them, but is coming off of his worst start. And then a couple days from now, you have Bryce Elder, who has been hot and cold to start his major league career. It's not like you got Sale, Strider, Reynaldo Lopez, who of course is injured. So this is a big chance for the Cardinals, and you would love to see a sweep, but at the very least, a series win feels super important so that you can gain some ground and get closer and closer to 500, then reassess.
Stefan, let me ask you this question. How important is it for the Cardinals? You just mentioned three guys who probably one hasn't really stretched out because he's just coming back. The other guy just got roughed up in his last outing, and the other young player is trying to find his way. How important do you think it is for the Cardinals to try and get it to Atlanta's bullpen early? And see and try them on for size for a little bit.
So important because their bullpen has changed just as much, right? They're rotating guys in and out. They're trying to figure out who their guys are. Scott Blewett was just traded for cash considerations from the Orioles to the Braves. So they're still working on who their late inning guys are going to be. Now, more importantly, the Braves have scored 77 runs this year. That's less than 4 runs per game. The only team that have scored less runs in the National League are the Rockies. So if you can get ahead,
are they still in the National League?
I guess they're relegated down.
Yeah, I really like Bud Black, man. But man, that I know it's allegedly the big leagues, but man, what an unfortunate situation that's turning out to be.
I think Clint Hurdle becoming the new hitting coach is going to help change some things a little bit, but at that ballpark, you got to be able to score more than 68 runs over a 21-game stretch when you play half the games there. So
can we get them in our division?
That would be nice. Let's move the Cubs to the West. They did well against the Diamondbacks. They did all right against the Padres. They did all right against the Dodgers. Move the Cubs west and let us duke it out in the Central. I think that would be great.
Hey, before we get out of here, guys, there's a little bit of controversy down in Atlanta over the weekend. If you saw that, some Jared Kelenic, doesn't run out thinks he gets a home run, doesn't run it out, gets thrown out at second. Comments made after the game about it. Ronald Acuna tweeting about it afterwards. But then they still go on to sweep the Twins. So doesn't seem like it's impacting them that much as far as the play goes. But you do have to wonder what that locker room might be like at the moment.
Well, it's an interesting situation. I see both sides of it. And obviously what happened to Acuna a few years ago still resonates with him. But, when you're a manager, you have to be fair with everybody, but that doesn't mean you treat them all the same. And I think if Snitker had it to do over again, he probably would have done things perhaps a little differently. And you spare me with the fact where the guy always hustles, he plays with his hair on fire. I don't want to hear any of that shit, okay? I know this. Guy he made a mistake. If he was corrected in the dugout, that's fine. I think the difference was, and Acuna would tell you, he was taken out of a game. And that's the most embarrassing thing you can do to a player, is take him out of a game after making a play like that. So because he didn't see that happen this time around, it still is on his mind on, well, we got a double standard here. But he took it down. So maybe either somebody said, hey, you know what, that's not probably a good look, because social media wasn't as prevalent when he was snatched off the field as it is now. Or is it one of those things maybe he thought it through and said, you know what, maybe that's a conversation I should have. Now, I don't even know if they'll have a conversation about it, because as you guys know, those things happen all the time and you just kind of keep it moving unless it's something that's really stinging. But it didn't have, as you mentioned, Joe, didn't have an impact on the Braves winning. But I would think that in listening to Snitker try and talk about it, I just thought he was digging himself a bigger hole with regard to this and making more of it than what it should be. That's something that should have been handled internally. It wasn't publicly. And, where it goes from here, who knows? Yeah, as somebody who grew up with Brian Snitker and has built a really good relationship with him, you will find very few managers that are as player-centric and advocate for their players as much as Brian Snitker does. The Cardinals are lucky to have one in their clubhouse as well, with Ollie Marmol, somebody that's just good with the media and understands the value of everybody's job. I think one thing that nobody's talking about is nobody's asked the question to Snit, hey, do you think you made a mistake with Acuna all those years back? And did that impact your decision with Kelenic this year? And they're different players. They're very, very different players. Kelenic
is not the face of your franchise. He's not. He's a fourth outfielder at this point in time with the Braves.
But he was Seattle's can't miss
right
child back in the day, and they let him go.
Yep. And so you are now at a point where you ask the question, right? Did he learn from the Acuna situation? You're not paying Kelenic $100 million. Kelenic has not been the National League MVP. He doesn't have quite the same social media magnifying glass on him that Acuna does, because when Acuna is healthy, he's a top 5 player in the National League. But I think that, again, it's just one of those things that is a quality of this game that's so different from in decades past. As somebody who's never played Major League Baseball, I don't understand the euphoria of hitting a ball on a perfect barrel and thinking it's going out, and in a big moment needing to celebrate. I don't understand it. I've never been in that moment. But what I do understand is it's got to be a baseline, hey, we don't do this here, or it's okay in certain situations. You can't switch in and out. And I think that's where the Braves are. And also the Braves have been struggling too. So maybe
it's magnified a little bit more.
Yeah. Maybe Snit didn't want to mention it because the team was already struggling. They get a sweep. If you really dwell on that, maybe the team spirals again after some positivity. So it's sort of a rock and a hard place scenario for the Braves.
The other thing that goes into this, we want to make the game entertaining, okay? And when the old adage, let the kids have fun. Okay, if you want them to have fun, you're going to have players that are going to have fun beyond what you're accustomed to. And we have a lot of players who now, you see it on the little league level. Joe, you see it. You coach kids, and now we see it on the big league level. And sometimes when those things don't go according to plan, an Acuna gets exposed a little bit more than some other players because he has this flair about his game. And, when you find a situation like that where maybe in Snicker's opinion, and in my opinion, when he did it, he didn't run it out. He made a mistake, just like Kelenic did. And how you handle it from there, you have to just say to yourself, there's a time and place for it. And you would only hope as a player that it's addressed in the same manner where he takes, and I'll give you an even better example. We had a couple of years ago, Tyler O'Neill didn't run out a couple of balls. And what happened? Ali took him out of the game. And then that created an issue outside of the clubhouse that people started to feel like, well, he lost the clubhouse when he took O'Neill. No, you know what he did? He brought the team closer together because the veterans had had enough of it. So you have to look at it in one sense, case by case, but always know what the action will be. I don't want to say punishment, but what the action will be by a manager, because those rules you shouldn't have to talk about. You should already know them. But if you need a reminder, this is the reminder for you. Come on over and sit next to me, and we'll watch the rest of the game.
I'm just curious what the hypocrisy aspect of it is like for the Braves fans. And I'm not suggesting that there are some maybe conflicts of interest in terms of what they've been talking about on social media, but I'd love to see if you went back and saw how Braves fans reacted to Acuna all those years ago, and the ones that are now angry with Snitker for doing that because he did it to Acuna. It's all about consistency. So be mad at both of them, or be mad at neither of them. And that's really what I think is. I'm sure there are people out there that were outraged when Acuna did it, and then he wins MVP, and then he's the face of your franchise, and now you're at his defense.
And he gets a little bit more runway too,
right,
because of that. And you know what? And Joe, you saw it. People used to look at Yachty when he didn't run balls down the line, now to first base. Albert wasn't going to beat anybody to first base, but you know what? They got a pass because they were Yachty and Albert. Some other guys do it. You're going to say, hey, what are you thinking? What are you doing?
Right.
And so, it's one of those things where it's that fine line in the sport that certain guys will get a pass, or you say, or I remember when Albert and Tony would always say, well, we're not paying him to run out balls down the line. We're paying him to do damage. Same thing with Yachty. So as long as guys do other things, I think, as long as they're committed to the team and everything else that comes with it, there's certain things you can probably say, hey, just want to remind you, man, this is how we do it, compared to saying, how dare you do this to our team?
Right. What last thing is that anecdotally, there is a story that my dad told me, and I can't believe I just remembered it now. of talking about Acuna in this exact situation, right? There were a couple of games early in the season where he wasn't running out the ball to first, and fans were not happy. They were not happy because one of his best attributes is his speed, right? He steals bases. He hits the long ball. Balls to the gap are dangerous. So my dad goes to Snit and says, hey, look, I'm just trying to understand this. I'm not trying to be accusatory, but I just want to know how I present this. Because it got to a point where the fans were asking, and the fans, you have to be objective, but you also have to be a representative of the team. Claibs, you know all about this, covering the Cardinals for as long as you have. Snit said, we tell Ronald, if a ball's hit right at somebody, just
put the brakes on.
Just put the brakes on. We want you to save your bullets for balls in the gap. Because at the end of the day, his health was more important than him beating out a 2-out infield single in the third inning of a game in May. And
yeah, you get grounded the ball to the second baseman on 2 hops and you going balls to the wall. I'm not sure if that's helping anybody.
Right. Only Chandler Simpson, maybe Victor Scott are pulling that off on occasion. So I think it's just kind of tempering our expectations of what these superhumans on the diamond are able to do. But there are definitely conversations that go on behind the scenes that fans aren't privy to.
And you know what? As we close out, it also just says how slow things are in the game right now, where that becomes a bigger story than what it should have been. Because those things happen on a daily basis around the game. We just don't talk about it as much. But this was a slow day. Obviously, nobody was watching the NBA and the NHL, and they thought this was a big story. So, we'll move onward, and we'll be better for it.
Eric Fetty on the mound tonight. You see the lineups there on your screen. Appreciate the time today, guys. We will come your way with Cards Hub postgame after the final out. Brendan Schaefer and Sarah Daly will have all of your recaps for that. And then, Stefan, you and I back on it tomorrow for Cards Hub 365. As always, it's powered by our friends at Gray Bar, and all content here on Sports Hub STL brought to you by DraftKings. The crown is yours. For Mike Claiborne, for Stephen Carey, I'm Joe Roderick. We'll talk to you next time.